Just a quick thing relative to your comments. Fred Hoyle's novel *The Black Cloud* was 1957, and they also influenced that first episode. But back to Tom Pearson's thing about motivations for us in SETI. I haven't been involved in the hardware aspect, anything like many people have. But in fact, I end every talk that I give on SETI that the real value of this is independent of the detection of it. And I think it's going to be a long, long time before we probably find a signal. The real value is the way it forces us to think of ourselves.
Right, I agree with you.
As somebody said it before, as an earthling, as a certain species, a certain single type of life and so forth, independent of success. So that, in fact, has been my particular motivation in this field, as well as feeling very amazed that the state of Washington is willing to pay my salary to think about such strange things.
Two more questions.
Yeah, I pulled up, for those who perhaps have heard references, oblique references to the decadal survey, a bit of background. The U.S. astronomy community actually pioneered this notion of every 10 years coming together in some sense and trying to figure out what we want to do for the next decade. One of the things that was contained in the most recent decadal survey, which has been alluded to, came out last month, was some assessment of demographics. And I find it interesting because I sort of share some of this concern about what is long-term future of astronomy and science in general, and yet the AAS membership, the professional society membership for astronomers in the United States, the total number of members increased by 33% over the 16 years surveyed, while the census data indicate that the US population increased by 20%. So it somehow seems that on the face of, from the data standpoint, either the data sampling that was used by the AAS is somehow inaccurate, the experiment is screwed up, or we're actually doing a reasonably good job of attracting people into this field. One of the concerns might be keeping them in the field, but at least attracting, we're not doing that bad of a job.
Hubble.
Yeah.
I think, and that really large increment in funding for optical astronomy that's gone along with Hubble, I think is a very big piece of that.
Which might come back to, why do we do this? Is it because we are intellectually stimulated, or we'll pay to do it?
But there's also a disconnect between what the 8th grader knows in science. That has gone down over the last decades as the number of scientists has increased. We're great at the top. Our median, however, is worsening.
Yeah, this is folklore from where I come from. The first director of what became Fermilab, the National Accelerator Laboratory, was Robert Rathbun Wilson, who was old-line physicist and accelerator builder, and in the 60s, he was the director of this brand new institution on a big piece of farmland that he was building, and he had to go before Congress over and over again to report on how it was going and ask for more money and so forth. And there's an exchange between Senator Pastore and Bob Wilson, a physicist, in the middle of the Cold War when Pastore had seen lots of scientists go by. And in the middle of this testimony, he asked, Dr. Wilson, can you tell us how the National Accelerator Laboratory will contribute to the defense of the country? Now, Fermilab's a ivory tower research institution, right? So it's, it was not relevant to military spending. But instead of doing what a lot of lab directors would do and trying to explain the practical benefits of the spin-offs that might come from the stuff we're doing, he stared him right down and he said, Senator, this laboratory will contribute nothing to the defense of the country, except that I hope it will be one of the things that makes the country worth defending. And he went on to say some of the things that Dr. Sullivan was saying, and some of the other voices I've heard in this room, that that a civilization has arts and other endeavors which only a few people engage in, but which are uplifting and which show, this is our hallmark. The plays of the Greeks, or the great architecture, or the age of cathedrals and so forth. You leave something behind, and in our time, we are leaving the edifice of science as the memory of our civilization. But it's as something to remind big science people of what we're all in the middle of. It's a nice story.
I have a question for Jon Lomberg. He's an artist. His work in Cosmos, as the Cosmos series, has been seen by literally billions and billions of people. So he has, I think, the record for the people in this room for it affecting the popular imagination. And clearly over the years, you must have gotten some feedback from the rest of the world about that. Are there things you can share?
Well, I still get a lot of feedback in terms of if I give a talk or something, a scientist will come up and say, it was Cosmos that got me interested in science. I mean, that just happened so many times, and it's astonishing and very gratifying. I think that the elephant in the room is kind of that whatever problem SETI faces, all science faces that, because the level of science illiteracy in the country is shocking and appalling. And even with the most basic kind of science, let alone anything difficult. And I don't know whether you view it as a kind of triage that, really we're only going to talk to students at Tufts and Harvard because the rest are sort of a lost cause. But then maybe it's just the elite that does science anyway. And as long as the jobs exist, the smart people who are interested in it will move in, and maybe widespread popular support isn't all that important. That might just be a way of trying to make the best of a bad situation. It seems to me that communicators like Carl Sagan we can never have enough of. It's getting harder because anything that's visual has to compete with Avatar, and the bar has been raised so high. The graphics that you routinely see on PBS shows about astronomy are I think they are uniformly good, way beyond anything we could do in Cosmos or even in Contact. And I know lots of people that watch those shows and enjoy those shows, and generally, I live on the Big Island in Hawaii, so there's a lot of astronomy talk, not SETI, but regular astronomy, especially among visitors who come there. And astronomy is a wildly popular science among people who are interested in science at all. So I guess the only thing we can do, not just for SETI, but for astronomy and science, is to try to remember that communicators are just as important as researchers, but it's much harder to train them. I mean, I often will get some young artist who says, I want to do what you do. Now, if they wanted to be an astrophysicist, I could tell them what their career path would be. There's a ladder, you go to this, you do this, and you can become a soil engineer or a genetic engineer or whatever you want. But if you want to be an artist in the physical sciences, an artist communicator in the physical sciences, there's almost no place that will train you in doing that. Medical illustration, yes, even some botanical illustration, but the notion that we need to train science communicators and that scientists themselves maybe need to do a better job at learning to be communicators is sort of the only practical approach I can see for what you can do.
So echo that and make a comment that it feels like astrobiology as a coherent field is still it's a new thing. It feels like astrobiologists are not yet sort of punching their weight in the arena that leads to visibility and funding. If you think about what astronomers are planning in the next decade from the decadal survey and so on, they're going to spend about $2 billion measuring in a variety of ways, measuring the equation of state of dark energy. So this is something you can't see, you can't touch, you can't visualize. Most, probably 0.01% of the population even knows what an equation of state is, and yet that is getting huge funding in a field, cosmology, that is very esoteric, very abstract, it seems like, not that it's a battle in that head-to-head sense, but it seems like the search for Earths and finding life in the universe should be slam dunking, you know, $2 billion spent on the ineffable. And I'm a cosmologist, so I think I like that science, but I feel there's a little out of balance maybe.
Where were you when this was being done?
Not in the room, not in the room. I was on the EPO panel, so I didn't get to talk about this stuff. Anyway, so my question, this sort of becomes a question for the panel or anyone, is what are the ways, and the connected piece of this is that the astrobiology community has a strong presence in planetary science and in astrophysics and SETI community, and it doesn't just have the coherence, say, of the cosmology crowd, which includes particle physicists now. So it just feels like we're not punching the weight yet, and if that connection to resources could be made, we wouldn't be looking at some of these slightly dismal futures in space projects and so on for the next decade, for example.
We have 5 more minutes and just a few more comments.
Thanks, Tom. I want to tell everybody about a website and Facebook group I run called Marketing for Scientists. The Facebook group is called Marketing for Scientists. The website is called marketingforscientists.com. They're connected. If you find one, you can find the other, where we talk about these issues every week. And I have 650 members. Most of them are astronomers, and a large fraction of them are on the cable survey.
Tom?
Well, direct follow-up to Chris's comment from the experiences that Jill and I had during the run-up to the NASA SETI program and the demise of it and working with Congress. I have a clear opinion about what you raised there, and it's because that level of cosmology is completely abstract to the political world and to the general public world. They simply don't get it, and they figure that the few who do know what the hell they're doing, and so it should be supported. On the other hand, searching for evidence of life and searching for evidence of intelligent life or searching for planets, the general public gets that. You know, and so then they can form their opinions on it. And whether they're Tea Partiers or whether they're, you know, part of Obama's team or whatever else, they'll have their views on it, but they will have their views. And they really don't have the ability to have a view on what you were talking about. So they leave it to the elite to figure it out, and the money gets spent. And I actually think it's about that simple when you're talking about what happens through the congressional appropriation process.
But people like to do science. People like to do science. If you look at how many people have, you know, characterized galaxies in Galaxy Zoo. And so, Jill, I don't know if that's sort of where you were going when you were talking about this community.
Definitely, in real
But
time.
kids that aren't interested in science that get dragged here for an overnight field trip love to use the 40-foot. They collect a chart recording. It's not a pretty picture. It's not a Hubble Space Telescope image. They like to do it, just like you like to make a cake. You know, you like to do it. And so I think that's where you're going to get, if you can get a way for people to have results, right? So you're doing a SETI experiment, but are there little questions that kids and the public can answer along the way? So that they're doing it, not just providing CPU cycles for you.
It's appropriate to have Frank make the last word to close out the discussion.
I want to endorse what John said a few minutes ago concerning the impact of Cosmos on people's entering the world of science. I give lectures all over the country and all over the world, and almost invariably after a lecture, someone will come up to me, usually in their 30s or 40s, and they'll say, "Did you know Carl Sagan?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, I went into science because of the Cosmos series." And you find this in Hungary and China and France and everywhere. And I don't hear that about anything else, really, that has been in the world of the entertainment, if you will, or the educational television. And I asked myself, what was special about Cosmos? It wasn't Carl so much. It was a lot of things. But I think it's because it brought a beauty and a profundity to science which resonated with people and made them feel that doing this was a good thing to do. Not only would it be pleasant, but they would actually be doing something very significant. And I think we need a new Cosmos series. You have to find somebody who can do it. But I think something like that Cosmos turned out to be a phenomenon in attracting people to science. We need it again.
Okay, thank you. What's next?
All right. All right, I'm going to take the chair's prerogative here to, John, sit down. Before I dismiss the panel. I love your idea of the disc here, but it's missing something. And it's missing a piece of humanity we can easily collect today. And that is, right now, people are on the web. We're collecting tweets from various people, Facebook. One of the things we could put on this disc are all the tweets from people of what people would want to say to ET. The challenge to those on the web right now is to create a tweet that they think best reflects their ideals of what humanity
Well, you
is.
can put that in one of the engraved nanodots.
Could you send it to Earth Speaks, which is the project at the SETI.org website that's collecting exactly this? So
What's the URL?
Earth Speaks. It's SETI.org, and look for the tab that's Earth Speaks, and it's being analyzed by a psychologist, sociologist, a bunch of people looking for cultural universals. So what is it that any human on the planet would think appropriate to say ET? Is there such a cultural universal?
Well, there definitely is an interest that people have in getting their name on a spacecraft or having a message sent out into space, even if they don't think through the fact that an English message is not going to be intelligible. In Australia last summer, Cosmos magazine, no connection with the show, but an Australian science magazine, organized a transmission that went out eventually from a DSN dish, consisting of basically tweets, a certain number of characters, and very interesting analysis can be done of what things people ask for. Mostly what people asked for was help. There was also a sizable percentage that had to do with beer. You drink beer, come have a beer with me. Is your beer as good as our beer? There's no beer as good as Australia. But the point is, people love the idea of saying something to the universe. And one of the nice advantages that message artifacts have over transmissions is there really no safety issue. Because of the speeds involved, there's really no concern about it, but it allows people to act on that impulse, and I think once they do it, the hope is, and I think the reason NASA does send signatures to Saturn and every other spacecraft that they put these signature discs on, is the hope that it makes people feel more connected to it personally. They can tell their children, my name's on Mars, whatever. So these artifacts are useless in terms of messages, unless you consider them messages to ourselves, messages to this society. And it also maybe takes what's a very esoteric, priestly kind of endeavor and democratizes it and lets everybody, play in it. So I think that has some real value, not a scientific value, but a different kind of value in, yeah.